Well, good morning. How are you all today? And welcome to American Reversion, where we talk about taking this country back to where it was supposed to be, to the way it was supposed to be. If you don't live in the United States, still welcome, whether it's Canada, Australia, Germany, the rest of Europe, wherever you are hearing this from. If this applies to your country, pay attention. Because whether it does or not, what happens in the United States, maybe sadly, maybe not, affects the whole world. Well, I want to talk about, we got several stories here today that I want to talk about. Of course, we're right in the middle of the New Hampshire primary. Though actually, I said good morning, but I'm shooting this in mid-afternoon because a lot of things happened this morning, and I wasn't able to get in here to do this. But so we are about mid-afternoon on the day of the New Hampshire primary, and we're, of course, Nikki Haley hoping to pull it out, and Donald Trump, of course, is hoping to make a strong showing. I fully expect him to, and I want to talk about that in a couple of minutes because we have political shenanigans, dirty politics, and am I being redundant? Dirty in politics? Well, politics is necessary. Politics almost always becomes dirty. But you know, we wish it weren't, don't we? But it is, and the thing is that we are often hamstrung by the fact that we play fair, and the other side doesn't. Well, in this case, what I'm going to explain to you about New Hampshire today, and also the next in South Carolina, is politics the way it should not be played, but it's illegal. And we're going to see what happens. But before we get to that, I want to share a couple of things with you. These are the kinds of things that you can share with your friends. You know, we are fighting for the large, undeclared, independent voters because that's where the battle is. Okay, the right is always going to vote right. The left is always going to vote left. But the people who decide elections, if you believe that elections are decided by votes, are the great unwashed, undecided, right? Now that doesn't mean independent, and I want to make that point, man. And here's although I didn't disagree with him on much, here is one point with which I always disagreed with Rush Limbaugh. He always said that he didn't understand independent voters or undeclared voters, one of that. And I tried. Of course, I never got in. I never called him. But the thing, what he didn't understand was, and I agree with him on undecided or undecided, because anybody who's undecided by the time a primary starts hasn't been paying attention. And this country should not be run by those who have not been paying attention. Sadly, it is run by those who are the decisions made, the votes cast, by those who have not been paying attention. That's one of the reasons that our country is in the mess that it's in. We have too many people who don't pay attention voting. You know, these people that say, I think everybody should get out and vote. Well, I don't. I don't think that if somebody is an idiot or if they haven't been paying attention, they shouldn't vote. Does that mean that they don't have a constitutional right to vote? No, that's not what I said for somebody who's going to come in and tip, but everybody has a right to vote. That could be the problem. Okay. Anyway, where Rush was wrong on that is he confused undecided with independent. Okay. And I'm an independent, but I am in no way undecided. Okay. What's happening up in New Hampshire? Well, let me get back to that, because this is going to all fit together. I want to read you a couple of headlines about the invasion of our country. Nothing new, right? Nothing new to you. You know what's going on. But according to the Congressional Budget Office, the Biden administration has released 6.2 million illegal migrants into the U.S. in 3 years, often through the parole loophole. You know, they come in and they say, hello, welcome to our country, and may I see your paperwork? And the person says, well, I don't have any paperwork. And they say, well, you don't have any paperwork. Well, who are you? Well, I'm John Smith. Well, John, have you ever been arrested? No, I've never been arrested, never done anything wrong in my life. Well, John, it sounds like you're our kind of person, but we want you to, we're going to give you this little, notice to appear in a court, in an immigration court, and your date to appear is March 3rd, 2029. Now, will you be sure to be there, John? Oh, yes, I will be there. Okay, John, welcome to the United States, and here's some stuff to fill out, and we're gonna get you some food and a place to stay, and $2,000 a month to live on, and here's some internal paperwork so that you can get a job, and so that you can get some ID, and so that you can improve your credit score. Have you all heard about this? Do you realize that there is money being appropriated to help illegals improve their credit score? Are you kidding me? Yeah, okay. That's one enemy within. Now let me introduce you to a person who I don't know if his name is probably John Smith, wouldn't you think? Okay, and the headline here is, let's see if I want to read to you down here. Okay. A migrant crossing the border into Arizona made an ominous threat saying, "Soon you're going to know who I am," according to one independent journalist. First responder media posted a video on X showing an interview with a group of migrants who illegally crossed the border 12 miles east of Sasabe, probably that's just west of Kemosabe, Arizona, over the weekend. At least one of the migrants in the small group, identified himself as an African migrant from Morocco. And the migrant said, in a threatening way, "You find out who I am very soon." I'll post this on the Patreon channel. You should be over there. If you're not, please come join us, because when I make videos like this, when I put them on the Patreon channel, I put the links to the articles so that you can read the whole article yourself and you can share them with people. And please share these. Please share these. And might I ask at this point, before I get to the next point here, would you mind giving this video a thumbs up and making sure that you're subscribed? We are in the fight, and we all need to help out on that. So give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, make sure you're subscribed, and please share this video. Now, the World Health Organization, WHO, has established an expert advisory group on transgender health, seeking guidance from a transgender former prostitute who called the line of work empowering. Let me say here, I used to, when I was in law enforcement, I had an informant, a snitch of mine, who was a prostitute. She ran a very large escort service. She never once referred to it as empowering. She made a lot of money, but, Okay, so let me back up here. They're seeking guidance from a transgender former prostitute who called the line of work empowering. So just imagine the kind of personality that feels that line of work is empowering. And an academic attempting to popularize gender effing as a critical legal theory. I'm not sure that I want to know what that is. The WHO's Guideline Development Group in the Health of Trans and Gender Diverse People was established to facilitate the creation of guidelines aimed at increasing access and utilization of quality and respectful health services by trans and gender diverse people, and establishing health policies that support gender-inclusive care and legal recognition of self-determined gender identity. I'm not going to go any farther than that. I don't want to read it. I will put it over there for those of you who want to read it in the privacy of your home. and share it with those you think may. You know, I worked at a hospital during the time that all this started coming out about how do I put this? Making sure that the LGBTQ plus community was served equitably and that the appropriate medical care, you know, what was offered and delivered to them. And my thought was always this: do they need different kinds of medical care? Nobody that I knew would have given anybody different. Nobody I knew asked, are you this or that? Nobody cared. They gave the same care to everyone. Okay, that's just throwing that out to anybody who wandered by, who thinks that we should deal with people in these kinds of issues because of their particulars. Okay? Okay, now, let me get to those are things. Go over there, copy them off of the Patreon site and send them around to your friends. What's going on in, excuse me, half a second. Okay, what's going on in New Hampshire right now? Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Of course, Nikki Haley is staying in. She's fighting the good fight, is the way she sees it. She thinks that the sisterhood is going to save her. All of the main players from South Carolina, her home state, have been up in New Hampshire supporting Trump, right? Endorsing Trump. You had Tim Scott, you had whoever else. Ramaswamy was up there. He's not South Carolina, but and Bergdorf, whatever, the guy that from North Dakota. And I know all these aren't from South Carolina. A lot of the former opponents of Trump were up there supporting him and endorsing him. DeSantis was not. I think it's going to take some time for Ron to come back around. We'll discuss that more another time. Lindsey Graham has said, another South Carolina hammer, has said, and I'm not a big fan of Lindsey, and he has endorsed Trump. He says, this is Trump's party. This is where it has to go. Everybody knows it. And the time to rally behind the Republican candidate is now. But Nikki feels like she's got to give it a go, right? Because, again, she feels she's so full of ego, you can't believe it. And she feels like she is just so morally superior to Trump, she's going to go after it. And she thinks she has the support of the sisterhood. You know, all the women in the world are going to vote for her. Sadly, many of them will. Many women will vote for Nikki Haley because she's a woman. But that's not the danger in New Hampshire. The thing about New Hampshire, and then it's similar in South Carolina, and I'll explain this, is that in New Hampshire, anybody can vote in either primary. Okay? So they're pushing all the Democrats to vote in the Republican primary for Nikki Haley. Because they want to, well, they would rather have Nikki Haley as to run against, right, than Trump. They know that Trump is going to beat him in a fair fight. And I know that brings up question. Trump is going to trounce him in 24 in a fair fight. It will be the biggest landslide since Reagan, if it's a fair fight. And, you know, and the refs call the plays right, call things right. So they want, of course, to vote for Nikki Haley because they'd rather run against her. Well, so the vote coming in, it's going to be very interesting. It could be very close. It could be, there's no way to know. But that doesn't really have anything to do. I'll tell you how it could go with a Trump blowout, it could go with a squeaker, or it could go with Haley looking very good. And the only reason that she would look very good is because of Democrat and non-aligned voters voting in the Republican primary. Now, this is a problem. This is a mistake. Nobody but Republicans should vote in a Republican primary. Okay. I'm not a Republican. I am an independent. And that's where Rush had it wrong. Just because we're independent doesn't mean we're undecided. But Rush was a staunch Republican, been raised in a Republican household. I understand that. It was the only thing he was probably wrong about. Okay. I'm kidding on that. But not very much. So that's where we have the problem. And so whatever happens in South Carolina or in New Hampshire today will be very interesting. Now here's the next thing. South Carolina. South Carolina is also, and when's that coming up? February 5th, something like that? South Carolina is also an open primary. What that means is, and I forget when the Democrat primary is, but it's before the Republican primary. What that means is anybody who has not voted or did not vote in the Democrat primary can vote in the Republican primary. So this allows Democrats and unaligned voters to decide who gets the support of the state, who wins South Carolina. Is that fair? Of course it's not fair. It's ridiculous. Why these states have these laws, I have no idea. Now, interestingly enough, this does kind of parallel Washington's caution against political parties. George Washington himself warned against political parties. He didn't think there should be political parties because he rightly said that once there are political parties, people will tend to be more loyal to their party than they will be to their country. I agree. How you get around that, I don't know. I mean, over on the Missouri side, where I lived for many, many years, they were non-political races. In other words, when somebody was running for mayor or whatever, they didn't run. There was not a Democrat ticket. There was not a Republican ticket. They just all ran without a D or an R behind their names. Everybody knew who was what, right? So the extent to which that helps, I don't know. But what they're doing in New Hampshire and South Carolina would seem to go along with Washington's admonition against political parties, but you see it doesn't. Because as long as there are party primaries, allowing people outside the party to determine your candidate, what's that? You wouldn't allow that, would you? If you have a family, and the family, you're deciding what you guys want for dinner tonight, but a whole bunch of people come in from off the street, and they say, well, we think that you should have something else, and it's something that nobody can stand. But because they came in and they had the votes, they were able to determine that you all were going to eat grass and pig's snout tonight. Okay, that's kind of what these open primaries are. So what we see in New Hampshire and South Carolina, New Hampshire tonight, it'll be interesting to see what comes in, may or may not be a good indicator of what's coming later. And this may sound like I'm hedging my bets, but I'm not. I'll say this, that if Trump trounces Haley or even wins with a margin of, I would say, over 10%, that's going to show how strong he is. And I think we're going from there onward. And, she would be very smart to withdraw before South Carolina, because a loss in South Carolina is going to be an embarrassment she will never be able to get over. Okay, she was the South Carolina sweetheart, until people started seeing the real Nikki Haley. And even but if she gets through, if it comes close, that still doesn't say anything about Nikki Haley being a good candidate or having any chance of winning the nomination. Simply means we're going to South Carolina, and we'll see what happens there. I would imagine that Trump will trounce her down there, but here again, if the Democrats play in a dirty game, and this is a game that has no honor. There's no honor in this. I know that it's strategic. And if you were going to war, I would say that's fine. Too many people see politics as war. I understand it's dirty business. This is the way it's done, but it's not honorable. But the Democrats aren't honorable, and if they can get enough people, because they don't need anybody to vote in their primary. They know who they know Big Mike's running, you know, and so they don't need any of their people. They'll just say, hey, everybody, don't vote in the Democrat primary. We want you all to go over and vote for Nikki Haley in the Republican primary. That's what's going to happen. So I want to warn some of you who think that these races are going to be important. Not necessarily. If Trump blows out, you know, and by that I mean in a good way. If Trump blows her out, it's going to show his strength. If he doesn't blow her out, it does not show his weakness. It shows the problem with these primaries. Okay? All right. I may be back tonight to talk a little bit more about it when we get in the returns of the primaries. That'll be after 8 o'clock Eastern. We'll just see. If I feel like I want to get back on here, I will. And if not, I will get back on tomorrow. But until then, I want to remind you that America needs a reversion. He agrees with me. You agree with me. Let me take a sip. And it needs you to be a part of it. It needs your friends to be a part of it. It needs you out there influencing people, taking this information to people. So we'll see what happens today. If you're not with us on Patreon yet, please come over so that you can access. It only costs $1. It's not that we need your dollar, although we appreciate it because it helps. You know, it helps the channel. It helps support what we're doing. But it lets you get access to the different things that I will put up over there. And if you go over there, you'll say, yeah, I'm glad I came over here. It was worth a buck or 10 or whatever, you know, whatever you would like to share. So you all have a good day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.